Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 4. So, this week we're going to talk about functions. Last week we have discussed about loops, and we have seen that there are two types of loops, that is while loop and the for loops. And we have seen how to implement loops in programming. Today we're going to talk about functions. So, what are functions? Functions are a group of statements within a program that perform a specific task. So there is one more term, to the code wherein we implement functions, and that term is modularized program. So program in which each task within the program is in its own function is called as modularized program. So what generally happens in a modularized program is, or in functions basically is, a bigger task or a bigger code is divided into smaller codes. Okay. And that smaller code is being given a name. That name would be function. And whenever you want to call a function, you call it using its definition. For example, let's write a code. Okay, let's understand it with a coding example. So for example, let's say I want to print the animal behavior. Okay, I want to print animal behavior. Okay, so I'll print, let's say, dog's behavior. Okay, now what does the dog do? Dog says I eat, right? I bark, or I eat, I sleep, and let's say I run, right? The /n is called as escape sequence, and it is generally used when you want to take the cursor to a new line. Okay, let's run the code and see the output first. So this is how the output will look like. Okay, so dog's behavior is, the dog says he eat, sleep, and run. Similarly, if we'll talk about a cat's behavior, okay. Okay. So what does the cat says? Cat also share the same behavior, eat, sleep, and run, right? So if I run this code, now it will print the cat's behavior. Okay. And let's say I'll say tiger's behavior. Okay. So I'll say tiger's behavior. And the tiger also do the same thing, right? Eat, sleep, and run. So now if I'll run this code, see, animal behavior, dog says eat, sleep, and run. Cat says eat, sleep, and run. Tiger says eat, sleep, and run. Now, if you'll notice here, I'm repeating the same code again and again. Okay, I am doing the same code. This is the same code. It's just the change of the name over here, right? Otherwise, it is the same code that I'm repeating. What does this leads to? It leads to like wastage of time, because I'm investing time in typing, right? Wastage of efforts, wastage of energy, okay, because I'm doing the same thing again and again. So instead of this, what I would do is I'll write the code that I need so many times at one place, and then I will call that code. Okay. For example, herein I'll define a function. We'll see the definition, how to define it. Just look at the example first. Okay. So okay. And I'll put these things that I eat, I sleep, and I run inside that function. Okay. Now, instead of writing this whole code, what I would do is, instead of writing this code, okay, I'll say print dog's behavior. Okay. And what I would do, I will call this function. So I will call this function here. Okay. I want the function here. I'll call this function here. Now this is REPL, in which we have to write the function before we call it. Okay. So let's see, because it is giving me an error and some, okay, let me run it and check first. Okay. Yeah, so it worked. So how did it work? First, the program execution starts from here, then it print the dog's behavior, and then it call the function. So when we say call the function, it means the program execution will go to line number 1. It will match animal behavior with the function name, which is this one, and it will print whatever is written inside the function. And that is what it has done here, okay? So same way, if let's say I want to print cat's behavior, okay? So again, I'll do this, I'll run it, and it will print the cat's behavior, okay? So again, what happened? Herein, this print statement is executed, and after executing the print statement, the function is called at this line, and it goes to line number 1. And same thing I can do with the tiger's behavior. So I'm gonna say tiger's behavior or tiger behavior, and I'm gonna run it, and again it will print the tiger behavior as well. So now you see, it has saved me from typing the code again and again. It had saved me from typing the same code again and again. So what happens is, when you type the same code again and again, many times it happens that you may make mistakes. Second thing, it takes a lot of your time. Okay, so if you use functions, it will, excuse me, it will save the time and the efforts that you invest in typing the same code again and again. Okay, there are more advantages to functions rather than only this one. Okay, so a smaller task is being divided into small manageable tasks, and you can call it whenever it is necessary. And this slide shows the same thing. Okay, what is the benefit of modularizing a program with function? Benefit of using functions include simpler code reuse. Okay, so if you'll see here, I have wrote a function here, this code, and I'm reusing this code here. I reuse the code here. I reuse the code here. Okay, so that is another advantage of function. Okay. So the advantage is simpler code reuse, write the code once and call it multiple times. Better testing and debugging. Can test and debug each function individually. Again, it leads to the faster development and easier facilitation of teamwork. So if you're dividing the program into some smaller chunk of codes, okay, you can ask the developers, you can assign those functions to be developed by the developers. Okay, different developers can work on the same program. So that is another advantage. Different team members can write different functions. Now, let's see the syntax of the function. Okay, so here and I have explained how does the function works, but let's see the syntax of the function and what are the types of functions. So the syntax of functions is, you write the keyword def, you write the function name, okay, opening and closing parentheses, colon, and provide an indentation, and then write the Python statements, okay? This indentation indicates that this Python statement, whatever code you're writing, is a part of the function, okay? So this code has to be executed when the function is being called, okay? So for example, let's write a function here, okay? So I'm gonna write a function here. I'm gonna write def, and let's say message, okay? Now, in this function, I'm gonna write print hello and welcome to Python programming language. Okay. Now see, if I'll run this code, nothing has printed. Even though I wrote the code, nothing has printed here at the output. Why? Because I just wrote the function. Okay, I just wrote the function, but I did not call the function. Okay, so when you write the function, you have to call it to execute. So the way you call it is, you just write the function name. So I'm going to write the function name. Okay, and followed by the opening and closing parentheses. So herein I have called the function. Okay, now see the program execution starts from line number 4 here. Okay, and it sees, your interpreter is going to see whether you have a function name matching to that name, and it will call it. So now when I run it, it will print hello and welcome to Python programming language, right? So this is how the functions work. This is a very, very basic function, okay? Now, generally when we write function, we write it in another function, which we call it as main, okay? So I wrote a function main, okay? And in that, I call the function. Okay, now see, because I wrote it in the main function, I have to call the main function as well. Right? So I'll call the main function. Now I'll run this. And what happens is the program execution starts from line number 8. Then it goes to line number 4 and it sees that there is a function called in this function. So program execution go to line number 1 and execute that function. Okay. This also shows that you can call a function inside a function. So for example, main is a function and message is another function. So what I'm doing here is I'm calling one function inside another function. Okay, that's how the functions work. Now, as I said, this is a very basic definition of function. Okay, and this is the syntax of function. Now, there are two types of functions, okay? Void functions and value returning function. Okay, void you can also call it as non-value returning function. Okay, what we have seen is an example of void or a non-value returning function because it is not returning any value. So if you'll see, this is not returning any value, we're just printing it. Okay, now one more thing before we go to the value returning function is function can take some parameters as well inside it. Okay, for example, if I'll talk about this function that you see here, okay, this one, the code that we have written it over here. Now, instead of writing hello and welcome to Python programming, I want to write it as hello, some name of a person, and then welcome to Python programming language, okay? So I can do it like this. So for example, if I want to say hello SJCC, welcome to Python programming language. Now see, let's run this code and it is saying hello SJCC, welcome to Python programming language, okay? Next time, if I want to call somebody else, so for example, Berkeley. Okay, hello, Berkeley, welcome to Python programming language. So if you'll see here, and every time I'm changing manually, okay, that is not a good programming practice, okay. The program should be able to get the user input, okay, and then implement it over here. So in that case, what you can do is you can make use of functions that accepts arguments, okay? So the way it works is you write the function name, okay, and arguments or parameters, let's say. Pass some parameters inside it, okay? And then goes your Python statements, okay? So for example, herein, what I would do is, here in the main function wherein I'm calling that function, I will ask the user to enter the name. So I'll say name equals to input, enter the name, okay? And then I'll pass this name to this function message, okay? Now, so when I'm defining that function, I will do the same thing here. This could be any other variable. You don't have to necessarily use the same variable, okay? And herein, what I will do is I'll use an F string, okay? And herein, I'll say hello. And whatever name is taken is being provided by the user, that name will come here. Okay, see the way it works is, for example, the person enter a name, let's say Stanford. Okay, now herein what will be passed? Herein in my function definition would look like this. Okay, the interpreter will take it like this. Now herein, this instead of this name, okay, what will be passed? Stanford, because if you'll see the function definition is not now like this, okay? So instead of name, the Stanford will be passed here, okay? So define message Stanford. So herein, we know that when we use F string, what you put inside the curly braces is the value of the variable. So what is the value of this variable here? If you'll see, this will be message and Stanford, right? So what is the value of the variable? Value of the variable is Stanford. So this value will come here and it will print, hello, Stanford, welcome to Python programming language. Now let's run this. It's asking me to enter the name because the program execution starts with line number 4. So I'll enter the name. Let's say the name is Stanford. Okay, and I'll hit enter. And okay, and what has happened? Okay, so I made a mistake because I should have used this double quotes after F. Okay, and I used it before F. So I'm going to run this code again and enter name. Okay, I'll enter and see it is printing, hello Stanford, welcome to Python programming language. Okay, so that's how the functions wherein we pass the arguments work, okay? Let's see another example, okay? Now, it can take, it is not necessary that it should take only one argument. You can supply as many arguments as you want, okay? As many as the program, as is the requirement of the program. So for example, let's write another example, okay? So let's say I want to find out the sum of two numbers, okay? So what I would do is, I'll define a main function, okay, wherein I'll ask the user to enter two numbers. So I'll say number 1 equals to, let's say, integer input, and I'm going to ask the user enter number 1. Okay, and similarly, I'll ask the user to input number 2. Okay, now I do not want to print the addition directly here. So I'll use a function, okay, wherein I'm going to pass these two numbers. I'm going to name that function as sum, okay? And I'm going to pass these numbers there, number 1, comma, number 2. Okay, now let's define that function. So how do you define a function? Def sum, and it expects two variables. So I'm just write it as n1 and n2, okay? Remember that this name of the function should be same. What you pass it inside the bracket, the variable names could be different, but the meanings remains the same. This means this is n1 is number 1 that is supplied by the user, n2 is number 2, okay? Now I'm going to print, okay? I'm going to print the addition of these two numbers. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to pass n1. I'm going to say plus n2 equals to, and it will evaluate n1 plus n2. You can also use a variable, okay, to define that, to define the addition of the numbers. Now see, I'm going to run this code Okay, it did not work. See why it did not work? Because I did not call the function yet. So I'm going to call the main function. Okay, I'm going to run the code. It's asking me to enter number one. I'll enter the number one as, let's say, 23, number two as 45, and it is printing 23 plus 45 equals to 68. Okay, so you see how did it work? I pass the arguments here. Okay, program execution always start from the main function here. So herein you're gonna supply number one, then supply number two, whatever user has entered, you're gonna call that function, pass it to the function. Okay, so when you pass it to the function, what happened? The program execution goes to line number 6 and print the values of the variables here. Okay, and the value of the calculations as well. So this is how the functions works. Okay, when you provide the parameters, you can provide many numbers inside the bracket. Okay, so you can print as many parameters, you can supply as many parameters as the requirement of the program inside the bracket here. Okay. Okay, so we have seen how to use functions wherein we pass the parameters. Now let's talk about the value returning function. Okay, the functions that return value. Okay, so the syntax of the value returning function is you write def, you write function name. Okay, it could be a void function or it could be a function wherein you supply parameters. Okay, so then you're gonna write a return statement. Okay, whatever is your Python statement that goes in the function will go here. Plus, it will always have something called as return. Okay, so it will return the value, whichever you want to return from that function. For example, let's take the same example here. Okay, so herein, instead of printing it over here, okay, I'm not gonna print it now. This is my function wherein two values is being supplied. I'll say return n1 plus n2. Okay, so what is this function going to return? It will return the addition of number one and number two. Now, when it returns a value, that value has to be saved in some variable. Okay, so where are you going to save that? You will have to create a variable here. So now when you call this function sum, it will return a value and I will save it in a function, in a variable called as addition. Okay, so I'll say addition equals to sum number one plus number two. And let's print that addition. So I'm going to print it again using f string. Okay, so I'm going to say number one plus number two equals to and addition. Okay, so what we did, we asked the user to enter number one. So let's say the user entered a number two. Ask the user to enter number three. Let's see the user entered number two as 3. And herein, what will happen is this addition variable will save the value of the value that is being returned by the sum function. So wherein we are passing 2 and 3. Okay, so this is how internally will be interpreted by your interpreter. So sum 2 comma 3, and it is this now the program execution goes here. Okay, it return the addition of 2 and 3, that is 5. And who stores that value? Addition stores that value. Okay, and that is how it works. So for example, let's run this code and I'm going to provide 2 comma 3 and see it is printing the same result. 2 plus 3 equals to 5, right? So this is how functions work, right? Okay. Now, the variable that you define inside a function becomes local variables. So if you'll see here, number 1 and number 2, this is local variables local to the function main, right? If you define the variable outside the function, that becomes a global variable that can be used by the whole program, okay? So, for example, herein, if I do not provide the value of n1 and n2, number 1 and number 2, okay? And herein, if I try to print this number 1 plus number 2, will it take? No, it's giving me an error. Why it is giving me an error? Because number 2 and number 1 and number 2 are the local variable, okay? Which means it can be accessed only by this function, main function, because it is defined inside a function. So any variable that is defined inside a function is accessible only to that function. It is not accessible to the other code outside that function. Okay. The same thing is being shown in this example. Number 1 and number 2 is defined inside a function main, right? And when I'm trying to access it in the sum function here, it is giving me an error. Okay, why does it give me an error? Because those are the numbers that can only be accessed through the main function. Okay, because it is defined inside a function. If I would have defined number 1 and number 2 outside it, okay, let's say here. Okay, now see, it will not provide any error. Okay, why won't it provide an error? Because now the scope of the function is global. Okay, it can be accessed, it can be accessed by outside the, by any other code as well, okay, which is outside. You see this? Yeah, now it is, this one is not showing any red line because that number 1 and number 2 are now having a global scope and not having a local scope. We call it as local scope and global scope. Okay, so when you define it outside the function, it is accessible to every other function as well. But if you define the variable inside a function, it is accessible only inside that function. Okay, so for example, herein, when I wrote the code, okay, here, it was accessible only inside a function. To make it accessible from the outside function, you have to supply it outside, as I have called it here, sum number 1, number 2, right? So function that is defined, not function, but the variables that are defined inside a function are local to that function, okay? They are created and they are terminated when the function execute and when the function terminate, okay? It is not accessible outside the function. However, if you define those variables outside the function, it is accessible to the whole code, okay? Let's take another example, okay? Okay, I hope you would have understood this, right? So for example, if I have, okay, this function. So I created a variable which says fly, and I assigned a value equals to true here, okay? Now, I will define another function, okay? And let's print the value of fly, okay? Now, will it print? Let's see. Okay, I have not called it yet, so I'll call it first. Okay, now let's see. Let's run it. See, it is giving me an error because what does it say? Name fly is not defined, but I have defined it here. Why it is not accessible? Because I defined it inside this function. Okay, so it is not accessible by any other function. However, if I will define it outside, okay, so now outside I'll define it as false, okay. Now see, it can access this variable false because that is defined outside the function. Let's see, when I run it, it will call false. Why? Because I defined it outside the function. I did not define it inside. So this variable fly, even though the name of the variable, see, name of the variables can be same because when you define it inside the function, the scope becomes limited. Okay, scope becomes local to that function. So the variable can have same name with different meaning inside different functions. Okay. So herein this fly is false, which is a global, which has a local global scope. So it is accessible by the main function. But this one, this fly equals to true is only accessible by this bird function. So now inside this, if I'll call this bird function and I'll run this, okay, yes, because I'm not printing anything, right? So I'm gonna print, I am in bird, okay, and I'll print the value of fly. Now see, when I run this code, it will print I am in bird and it says true. Okay, so I hope you have understood the how do we generate functions and how do we assign values to the function? How do we call functions? What does it mean by the scope, local scope, and the global scope? Sometimes we use a keyword called as global here as well, so that the variable is accessible by all the code that you have written. Okay. Now, one more thing that I would like to talk about here is the use of the random variable. Okay. How do we generate a random number? Okay. So the way we generate a random number is we have to use a keyword import random. Okay. Random is the name of a library. Okay. So import random, create a variable, okay, and then write down as random dot rand int, okay, give the value. So what will it do? This generates a random integer number between 1 to 100, okay. First, you have to import a random. Now, what does it mean by import random? It means we are importing certain libraries that are stored in the Python and it comes with the standard Python package. Okay, library means some ready-made code is being written, some code is written in some functions, and then you can directly use it in your code. Okay, so some function called as randit is written in the random library, okay, and we are using it in our function. So we say that import random, and when you say random.random, it is going to generate any number between 1 to 100. Okay, so it will generate a random number between 1 to 100. Let's print it. Okay, so I'm going to print this number and let's see. Okay, so first time it printed 28, now 9, now 79. I run it again, 61, 25. So every time you run the code, it will generate a random number between 1 to 100. Okay, that's how the random thingy work. Now, for example, herein, if I want to print, let's say 10 random numbers. Okay. Okay, let's see. See, I have called this random.randint 10 times. Okay, we have seen how to make use of loops, and it is providing me 10 random numbers. It might also happen that sometimes you get repeated numbers. Okay, so for example, maybe in this range, maybe I will get 39 two times or three times. That is also possible because it is randomly generating the number. Okay, so random.randint is being used to generate a random number between a range. Now, if I want to, let's say, design let's design a game, okay? And let's say the game is a quiz game. Okay, wherein I'm gonna ask the user to enter to, not user, but your computer is going to generate two random numbers. So what is it going to do? this quiz is computer is going to generate two numbers randomly, and I'm going to ask the user what is number 1 plus number 2. Okay, and I want the user to answer this question. Okay, if the answer is correct, I'm going to say that's right. If the answer is incorrect, I'm going to say that's incorrect. Okay, so let's see. So herein, let's say I'll generate two random numbers. I'll say number 1 is equals to random. First, I'll have to import random, right? So I'm going to say import random. I'm going to ask number 1 is equals to random dot rand int. Okay, 1 to 100. And same thing I'm going to do here. I'm going to call this variable number 2. And let's ask the user what is number 1 plus number 2, right? So I'm going to store it in a variable. Let's say user answer or just answer, okay, equals to, and the way we ask the user is we use the input statement, okay? So I'm gonna say eval input, and I'm gonna use f string. I'm gonna use what is number 1 plus, you can write it other way as well, okay? Number 2 equals to, and I'm gonna print it like this, okay? Let's see if this much portion of the code works fine or not, okay? So it has generated two random numbers, 83 and 13. It is asking you user to enter the result of it, right? So let's check if the answer is correct or not. So I'm gonna say if answer equals the actual addition, that is number 1 plus number 2, right? If the answer matches the addition, I'm gonna print that's correct, okay? Else, I'm gonna print that's incorrect, and I'm gonna print the correct answer, okay? So I'm gonna say the correct answer is print the correct answer, okay? Which is number 1 plus number 2, right? Let's see this code, okay? So I'm gonna run this code and let's check. So I'm gonna run this code. It's asking me what is 82 plus 58. I'll just enter a random number for now. Okay, not a correct one. And see, it is saying that is incorrect. The correct answer is 140. Right, let's run this again. And let's enter a correct answer. That will be 63, I guess. And it is saying that is correct. Right. So you can generate a quiz using the random numbers, right? Now, if instead of just using two numbers, I mean, just using one run, I want to generate 10 numbers, okay? And I want to ask the user to get the answer for those 10 sets of numbers, okay? So I want to do this. I want to repeat this segment of code 10 times. So in that case, what would you do, okay? You're gonna take it, so you can make use of the for loop, right? You're going to take this, the whole thing, and you're going to generate a for loop, right? So you're going to repeat this whole thing 10 times. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do for I in range. Okay, and I'm going to say 10. Okay, and this whole code that we have written it over here, I'm going to do one tab so that it is indented and is the part of the for loop. So it would look like this, right? The whole code would look like this. Now see, let's run the code. Okay, so it is asking me 24 plus 9. I'll just enter something random for now. Okay, now something random. Let's say 77. 32. Okay. Something random again. Okay. So it will repeat 10 times. Okay. Because I said that repeat this code 10 times, right? So I can generate 10 different numbers and can ask get the user input, okay, to provide me the output of that number. Now, instead of writing this, okay, you could have also written it as this whole code, I will take it inside a function, okay? So I'll define a function quiz, okay? And what would I do? I'll call this function 10 times. Okay, let's make it as like 3. Okay, so that we can see the output. Okay. So what did I do? I call this function, this quiz function 3 times. Okay, I put the whole code inside the function. Now let's run this. Okay, and what is this? Quiz is not defined. Did you mean quit? Nope. Okay, and why is saying quiz is not defined? Maybe because it is REPL wherein you have to write the code. I mean, sometimes this works, sometimes this does not. Okay, so when you're defining a function, you have to define the function before calling it. Let's run this. And it is working. So 95 plus 28 is 113. Okay, it's 123. Okay, 145. That's correct. Okay, you see how did I make this code work? So you can design a quiz game. Similarly, you can design a addition game or a subtraction game or a multiplication game, etc. Okay, you can also define scores here. Okay, so every time, for example, the user enter a correct number, I mean correct output, you increment the score by 1. Otherwise, the score is not incremented. Okay, let's see how. So for example, I'm gonna now put it in my VS Code. Okay, so this is my VS Code and I'm gonna create quiz.py. Okay. And why did, okay, my bad. I created a new folder instead of new file. Quiz.py. Okay, now it is opened here. I'm gonna close this terminal, copy my code here. Okay, and this. Let's first check if my code works here or not. Okay, so I'm gonna run this. Okay, VS Code has. Okay, now I'm gonna run it again and let's see. Quiz is not defined. Okay, so here also you have to first define the function before calling it. Okay, so now it will work, right? Okay, so it is working here. Something I'll enter something. Okay, so it works. Okay, now I want to increment the score as well. Okay, and every time a person enters a correct value, the score should be incremented. Okay, so I'm just gonna get rid of this thing. Now, what would I do is I'll define a variable score, okay, equals to 0. If the answer is correct here, okay, so here isn't the answer correct. So what I would do is I'll increment the score by 1. So what would it say? Score is equals to score plus 1. Okay, and at the end, what I would do is I will define, I will put, I will print the score as well. Okay, so here on, After this, what I would do is I will print the scores. Okay. So I'm gonna, we can also return the score from here, but let me just print it here. So I'm gonna print, you got, let me get a F string, and it's gonna say you got this much correct. Okay, these many correct. Let's run this. Okay, again, I'll have to first clear the screen, and that is the thing that I do not appreciate about VS Code. Okay, Korea. Okay, now I run this, and 23 plus 32 is 55. 41 plus 73. Okay, I just wrote an incorrect. And this one, incorrect. Okay, now see the way it is doing. I do not want it to do it like this. Okay, I want to print the score at the end. Okay, I want to print the score at the end. So it is okay. The thing is, because I am calling it in the for loop here, so it is printing it every time when the program executes. Okay, and I do not want that. So what I would do is I'll return the score and put it in a variable here. Okay, so let's say S is equals to quiz. Okay, and then I'll print it here. You got these many correct. Let's see if this works or not. I still, and clear, run it. One, wow. Okay, and score is not defined. Where? Print return score. I have defined score. What is saying score is not oh, instead of S, I wrote score here. Okay. Let's run it. Okay. And 9, 169. 27. Okay, it was correct. So it's 12 to 42. That's correct. Okay. And this one, 10, 50. Okay, and why it is? Okay, well, looks like it went into an infinite. Okay, no, here. Okay, okay. So it is showing the score. It is showing it in a incorrect way. I did not wanted it to show it like that. So, but you can use this logic to increment the score. Okay, so you will have a score variable. We will initialize a score variable here. So maybe here, and I'll show you initialize the score variable. Whenever the user enters a score, you will say these many are correct and these many are incorrect, right? So let's say correct equals to 0. Okay, and I'll say incorrect equals to 0 here. Okay, whenever the user, if the answer is correct, I'm gonna increment the correct counter to 1. Whenever the answer is incorrect, I'm gonna do the incorrect counter to 1, okay? And then print it at the end. So I'm going to print again f string. You got these correct and these many incorrect. Okay, so what you would like to do is you're gonna instead of calling it here, what I would do is let's first see. So what I would do is I'm gonna use a for loop here. For I in range 3 and I'll do this. Okay, let's see. So I'm gonna run this code. Okay, the thing is I did not call the function quiz. So I'm gonna call this function, I'm gonna call it quiz. Okay, let's run this. And 52 plus 91, 2 plus 1, 3, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 140, okay, 143, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 137, and I will put a wrong answer here. That's incorrect. The correct answer is, okay, you got 2 correct and 1 incorrect. So this is what we were interested in, right? And that's how this code works. So I hope you are clear with how to use functions, how to use random variables. Let's see what is the assignment of this week. Okay, so if you'll see, in this week, the deliverables are you have a discussion post, you have a quiz, and you have an assignment. Okay. Now, if you'll see, I have posted the tutorials over here. I have also posted some practice questions. Okay. I would always suggest you to go and download these practice questions. If you'll see these practice questions, it also have solutions inside. Okay. So, for example, do this. See, the answer is also posted. But what I would suggest is um, you try to answer it first, okay, and then look at the correct answer. Please do these practice questions. It will help you enhance your skills, okay? Now, talking about the assignment of this week, if you'll see, you have to also submit the lab report in addition to the .py file. Okay, so you have to submit the .py file plus this lab report. Okay, so what this lab report is consisting of is you just have to, whatever program you have, you do the screenshot of that code and then you do the screenshot of the output. So for example, if my code is this one, which we just saw, okay, so what I would do is, this is my code, right? What I would do is, let's say, let me just put it to a normal font so that it looks clean. Okay. Okay. Okay, so this is how my code looks like, right? So what I would do is I'll take the screenshot of this. Okay. Okay. And I would put it in here. Okay. Here, the screenshot of the code. Screenshot of the output. Again, the same thing you're going to do. Here in whatever is the output, whatever output you get after running this code, you put the screenshot of that output over there. Okay. One thing that I would like to mention here is when you see the lab here, okay, lab of functions here. Okay, it's not opening, so let me close it. Well, I have it open over here, okay. So it consists of 3 programs, okay. all the deliverables is being posted here. And the requirement of the program is posted as well. So the name of the function should be, for example, DAF some digit. So you have to use the same name for the functions. Similarly, the second one. Similarly, the third one. Okay. So, but herein I have named it as, I have written it as, name this function as, excuse me, menu program. And herein I have written it as lab4 program3.py. So if you already started it, it's okay if you write it as lab4 program3.py. It is also okay if you write it as menu program.py. Okay. So I hope the deliverables of this week is clear. Now this one, the menu program, is similar to the calculator program that we had seen in while I was explaining the if-else statement. Okay. So I hope these deliverables are clear. Let me know if you have question or if you are stuck in your code, please email me and I'll reply to your email. Thank you and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.